This one here was my maid disguised as a wife." Brad laughed in the middle of the crowded airport, pointing at Sarah. He didn't know that, in minutes, a private jet would land, and the truth would destroy his life forever. The Continental International Airport was completely packed that morning. Hundreds of people circulated through the main lobby, carrying suitcases, hugging family members, running so as not to miss flights. Sarah Sterling was in the economy class check-in line, holding her old suitcase with one broken wheel. The simple coat she wore was a bit wrinkled from the bus ride there. She watched the departure boards, checking for the third time if the flight time hadn't changed. She was nervous, not just about the trip, but about everything that destination meant. After years of rebuilding her life piece by piece, she finally had the courage to go back, to face ghosts of the past, to prove to herself that she had overcome everything. "I don't believe it! Sarah!" The voice came from behind, loud enough for several people around to turn and look. Sarah felt her stomach churn. She knew that voice. She had heard it every day for years. She took a deep breath before turning slowly. Brad Carter was a few feet away, wearing an impeccable suit and holding a genuine leather briefcase. Beside him, a blonde woman with platinum hair, wearing a tight animal print outfit and holding a designer handbag. Jessica Tate, the new girlfriend, or rather, the woman who had been the main reason for the divorce. "Brad," Sarah said simply, trying to keep her voice steady. "What a surprise to find you here," he said. But the tone wasn't of genuine surprise. It was of poorly disguised mockery. "Managed to scrape together money for a ticket? What an evolution." Jessica laughed loudly, covering her mouth with a handful of gold rings. "Honey, don't be cruel. Maybe she's traveling for work." "For work?" Brad laughed, getting closer. "Sarah, tell me, did you finally get a real job?" People in the line started to look. Sarah felt her face heat up, but kept her posture upright. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her bow down. "I'm traveling, Brad, just like you." "Oh, but there's a huge difference between our trips, darling," he said, making a point to speak loudly. "We are going first class to Dubai, vacation in a 7-star hotel. And you?" Sarah didn't answer. She just held her suitcase tighter. "Let me guess," Jessica intruded, approaching with a venomous smile. "Economy class? Maybe visiting some relative who can lend you money?" "Jessica, no need to guess," Brad said, grabbing the tag on Sarah's suitcase before she could stop him. "Look here, domestic flight. Not even international." He showed the tag to some people around, as if it were a hilarious joke. Sarah felt tears starting to form, but blinked hard to hold them back. She wasn't going to cry. Not there. Not in front of him. "Brad, please give it back to me," she said, extending her hand. "Please." He mimicked her voice cruelly. Always so polite, so submissive. "You know, Jessica, this was the Sarah I knew. The woman who never fought back, who accepted everything, who lived in the shadow." "Poor thing," Jessica said, making an exaggerated pout. "Must be hard to see your ex-husband happy with someone better." The entire line was now watching the scene. Some people looked uncomfortable, others curious. Some were even discreetly taking out their phones. Sarah wanted to disappear, but her feet seemed glued to the floor. "Did you know?" Brad turned to the people around, raising his voice even more. "That I supported this woman for years. I paid for everything, food, clothes, house, and you know what she did? Stayed home all day." "I took care of our home," Sarah said softly, but firmly. "I took care of you." "Took care?" He laughed with scorn. "You barely knew how to cook properly?" Every time I came home from work, truly tired, I had to eat tasteless food, made by someone who never made an effort to learn anything useful. An elderly lady in the line frowned, clearly bothered by the scene. A businessman shook his head, disapproving. But Brad was at the peak of his performance, fed by the attention. "And want to know the worst part?" he continued, now completely lost in his own cruel narrative. "I tried to make her grow, offered to pay for courses, college, anything, but no. She preferred to stay in that mediocre little life." Sarah closed her eyes for a second. The memories came like waves. The times she asked to study, and he said it was a waste of time. The times she wanted to work, and he forbade her, saying his wife didn't need to work. The times she tried to have a voice, and was silenced with screams and manipulations. "Brad, you know that's not true," she said, her voice starting to tremble. "It's not true?" He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Then explain to me why when we divorced you had nothing? No degree, no career, no money of your own? Why did you never leave?" The words came out louder than Sarah intended. Some people in the line murmured in agreement. Brad turned red. He didn't like being contradicted, especially in public. "Look at that. The victim has appeared," he said with venom. It was always like this, always blaming others for her own incompetence. Jessica hugged his arm, making a point to rub the relationship in Sarah's face. "Honey, forget her. Weak people always invent excuses." "You're right, my love," Brad said, kissing Jessica's forehead exaggeratedly. "You know, Sarah, you should thank me." "Thank you?" Sarah asked incredulously. "For setting you free. Now you can chase your little dreams of greatness. Can try to be someone in life, even if it's too late." "Too late?" A man in the line spoke, clearly irritated. "Man, what kind of person are you?" Brad turned to the man with arrogance. "Excuse me, do you know her story?" "No?" "Then don't get involved. I don't need to know the story to see that you are being cruel for no reason." The elderly lady spoke up, defending Sarah. "This is cowardice. Cowardice is living off others," Brad shot back, now starting to lose control. "You people don't know what it is to support someone who does nothing. I did everything." Sarah finally exploded, tears running down her face. "I took care of the house, of you, of your clients when they came for dinner. Organized your entire life while you took the credit." The lobby got quieter. More people stopped to watch. Airport staff began to approach, worried about the commotion. "Organized my life?" Brad laughed bitterly. "You could barely choose what clothes to wear without asking my opinion." "Why did you criticize everything I chose?" Sarah shouted back. "Why did you make me believe I was incapable? That I knew nothing? That I needed you for everything?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "Oh, what drama. You accepted all of that, darling. No one forced you." Sarah looked at Jessica with an intensity that made the other woman take a step back. "One day you will understand, when he starts doing the same to you." "With me it's different," Jessica said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "I'm not weak like you." "I thought I wasn't either," Sarah replied, wiping her tears, "until years of manipulation made me doubt myself." Brad clapped sarcastically. "What a beautiful speech. Did you learn that in some self-help video on the internet?" "I learned it in therapy," Sarah said, lifting her chin. "The therapy I pay for with the job I got after you left me with nothing." "Job?" He laughed. "Let me guess. Supermarket cashier? Attendant? Sales girl? Does it matter?" The man who had defended Sarah earlier spoke again. "Honest work is honest work. Of course it matters," Brad replied. "I built a company. I have employees. I close contracts worth millions. And her? She probably earns minimum wage doing some basic thing. Sarah took a deep breath. Every word of his hurt. But she was starting to realize something important. He needed to belittle her to feel big. Needed to humiliate her to validate the betrayal he committed. Needed to make everyone believe she was worthless to justify why he traded her. "You're right, Brad," she said calmly, surprising everyone. "I am starting over. I am rebuilding. And do you know what that means?" He looked at her with suspicion. "What?" "That I had the courage to start from zero again. Courage you never had because you inherited everything ready-made from your father." Brad's face turned dark red. That had hit a nerve. "How dare you!" He lunged forward, but an airport security guard appeared between them. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to calm down," the security guard said firmly. "You are causing a disturbance." "Disturbance? I'm just talking to my ex-wife," Brad protested. "Doesn't look like talking," the guard replied. Several people complained about the noise and aggression. Jessica pulled Brad's arm. "Honey, let it go. She's not worth it." Brad took a deep breath, clearly wanting to continue, but realizing he was starting to be at a disadvantage. "You're right. Let's go. We have a first-class flight waiting." He started to walk away, but couldn't resist one last jab. He turned to Sarah and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This one here was my maid disguised as a wife. Cooked poorly, cleaned poorly, was good for nothing. That's why I traded for a real woman." The people around reacted with indignation. Some booed. The elderly lady called Brad cruel, but he just laughed, hugged Jessica by the waist, and walked towards the first-class corridor, leaving Sarah standing there, shaking with humiliation and rage. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but then she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" the elderly lady asked with genuine concern. Sarah nodded, not trusting her own voice. "That man is horrible," the lady continued. "But I saw it in your eyes. You are strong, stronger than he will ever be." "Thank you," Sarah managed to whisper. The man who had defended Sarah approached as well. "Look, I don't know your full story, but anyone with eyes can see who the problem is here, and it's not you." Sarah smiled weakly, grateful for those strangers who had shown more humanity in 5 minutes than Brad in years of marriage. She finally reached the check-in counter. The attendant who had witnessed everything looked at her with compassion. "Your name?" "Sarah Sterling." The attendant typed the name, and suddenly her expression changed completely. She looked at Sarah, then at the screen, then at Sarah again. "Sorry for the confusion, Ms. Sterling," she said, her voice suddenly much more respectful. "There was a small error in the system. Your reservation has been updated." "Updated?" Sarah asked, confused. "Yes, you won't be boarding the commercial flight." Sarah blinked without understanding. "What do you mean?" The attendant leaned forward and whispered, "Ms. Sterling, there is a private jet waiting for you in the executive hangar. The team has already been notified of your arrival." Sarah's heart raced. Her blood ran cold. After all those years keeping the secret, hiding who she really was, trying to live a normal life, the time had come. "I understand," she said calmly, though inside she was a whirlwind of emotions. "An assistant will come to fetch you momentarily," the attendant continued. "And Ms. Sterling?" "Yes, the jet that is waiting. The records here say it costs $80 million. Sarah just nodded, grabbed her simple suitcase with the broken wheel, and waited. On the other side of the lobby, Brad and Jessica were in the first-class line, laughing at something on a phone, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. In in a few minutes, all that humiliation would turn into the most shocking twist that Airport had ever witnessed. And Brad Carter would learn that appearances can deceive in devastating ways. Sarah was standing next to the check-in counter, holding her old suitcase, when she saw a man in an impeccable suit approaching. He carried a tablet and had a discreet earpiece. His badge identified him as VIP Executive Services. "Ms. Sterling?" he asked respectfully, making a slight bow. "Yes," Sarah replied softly, still processing what the attendant had said minutes before. "My name is Richard. I am an executive assistant. I came to escort you to the private hangar. If I may, your luggage?" He extended his hand for her suitcase, but Sarah hesitated. That broken suitcase, simple, seemed so inadequate for what was about to happen. "Don't worry about the luggage, ma'am," Richard said, noticing the hesitation. "I have already arranged for it to be treated with special care." Sarah handed over the suitcase. Richard signaled, and immediately 2 other assistants appeared, taking the luggage as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Please follow me," Richard said, indicating the way. They started walking through the lobby. Sarah kept her head down, still feeling the echoes of the recent humiliation. But Richard walked with a posture that naturally opened space in the crowd. People moved aside, realizing something important was happening. "Sarah?" Jessica's voice cut through the air. They were passing near the first-class line, where Brad and Jessica were waiting for boarding. "Sarah? Where are you going?" Jessica asked, curiosity poorly disguised in her voice. Brad looked up, dropped his phone. When he saw Sarah being escorted by a man from VIP Services, his face twisted in confusion. "Excuse us," Richard said politely, trying to continue walking. "Wait a minute." Brad stepped out of the line, attracting irritated looks from those behind him. "Sarah, what is happening? You hired a VIP service?" There was pure incredulity in his voice, as if the idea was too absurd to be true. "Sir," Richard turned, his voice still polite, but with a tone of authority. "Ms. Sterling is expected at the executive hangar. I ask that you let us proceed." "Executive hangar?" Brad laughed loudly. "Sarah, stop this ridiculous act. Did you pay this guy to pretend you're important?" People started looking again. The situation was becoming a spectacle for the second time. "How pathetic," Jessica said, shaking her head. "Are you so desperate to impress that you hired an actor?" Sarah felt her face heat up with humiliation again. Even knowing the truth, their words still hurt. "Sir," Richard said, now firmly, "I don't know who you are, but you are delaying an important appointment. Please, return to your line." "Important appointment?" Brad stepped forward, his face turning red. "Do you know who I am? Brad Carter, owner of Carter Imports. And that woman there was my wife. I know her. She doesn't have money even for a decent ticket." Richard looked at Sarah as if asking permission to answer. She nodded slightly. "Mr. Carter," Richard said, his tone changing completely to something icy. "I don't know what kind of relationship you had with Ms. Sterling, but I can guarantee that your VIP services don't come close to what awaits her." "VIP services?" Brad laughed disdainfully. "She doesn't have money even to fix the wheel of her suitcase. Look at the state of that thing." He pointed to Sarah's suitcase, which the assistants carried with excessive care. "The lady's luggage is irrelevant," Richard replied. "What matters is that a private Gulfstream G650 jet is waiting in Hangar 5. The entire lobby went silent. A Gulfstream G650 was legendary. $80 million. The kind of plane billionaires used. Brad turned white. You are lying." "Sarah, Tell this clown to stop lying. Sarah didn't answer, just looked at him with a neutral expression, but inside her heart was racing. Lying? Richard took out his tablet. Would you like to see the flight documentation, Mr. Carter, or do you prefer to continue making a scene in public? Jessica pulled Brad's arm. Honey, it's a scam. They are trying to pull a scam on her. Let the idiot fall for it. Scam? A woman in the first-class line spoke loudly. You people really are cruel. Isn't it enough to have humiliated the girl before? This is none of your business, Brad shouted at the woman. It became my business when you turned the entire airport into your private audience, the woman shot back. Twice. More people started murmuring. Some took out phones filming the scene. Brad realized he was losing control of the situation again. Sarah, he changed his tone, trying to sound reasonable. Stop this. You're going to get in trouble. These scammers are going to steal the little you have. The little I have? Sarah finally spoke, her voice coming out stronger than before. You have no idea what I have, Brad. I know exactly what you have. He exploded. Nothing. You left our marriage with nothing because you were nothing. Had no career, no money, no future. Mr. Carter. Richard intervened, his patience clearly running out. I'm going to ask for the last time that you stop harassing my client. Client? Brad laughed bitterly. How much is she paying you to fake this? $100? $200? Nothing, Richard replied calmly. Ms. Sterling's services are courtesy of the company, as they always have been. As they always have been? Jessica asked, genuine confusion on her face. What are you talking about? At that moment, Richard's phone rang. He answered, listened for a few seconds, and his face became even more serious. Understood, he said into the phone, turned to Sarah. Ms. Sterling. A message arrived from the control tower. Your father is asking about the delay. The word father echoed through the lobby like thunder. Brad froze. Your father? Sarah, your father died years ago. Sarah closed her eyes. The secret she had kept throughout the marriage, the entire life she had hidden to try to have a normal relationship, was about to explode. My adoptive father died, she said softly, but not my biological father. What? Brad seemed genuinely shocked. You never mentioned a biological father, because you never asked anything about my life before you, Sarah replied, every word loaded with years of hurt. To you, my life began when we met, as if I had no history, past, family. That makes no sense, he shouted. If you have a father rich enough to pay for private jets, why the hell did you live how you lived? Because I wanted to, Sarah said simply. Wanted to know what it was like to live a normal life, far from the spotlight, far from the expectations, far from the surname. Surname? Jessica asked, her voice coming out strange. What surname? Richard looked at Sarah again, waiting for permission. She nodded. Tired of hiding. Sterling is not just the lady's surname, Richard explained. It is the name of the Sterling Enterprises Group, one of the largest investment holdings in North America. The floor seemed to disappear beneath Brad's feet. Sterling Enterprises Group. He knew that name. Every businessman knew. They were real billionaires, the kind of wealth that made his company look like a lemonade stand. You are lying, Brad whispered, but the conviction was gone from his voice. Sarah can't be. She is just a what, Brad? Sarah asked, tears starting to fall. A simple girl you could control? A woman with no ambitions, who would never overshadow you? A convenient wife who made you feel superior? I gave you everything, he shouted desperately now. House, food, comfortable life. You gave me a prison, Sarah replied, her voice breaking. Isolated me from my family, from my friends, from my own identity. I gave up billions to try to have a real marriage with you. The lobby exploded in murmurs. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. Billions? A woman whispered to another. Did she say billions? As inheritance from my grandfather, Sarah continued, the floodgates finally breaking. When I turned 21, I was entitled to $3 billion. But I didn't want it. Wanted to live simply. Know people who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. Brad was pale as a ghost. You had $3 billion, and never told me? I would have told if you had ever asked me about my life. Sarah exploded. But no. To you, I was a blank page. Woman without a past, without history, without self-worth. Ms. Sterling. Richard intervened gently. The jet truly is waiting. Your father is worried. Wait! Brad grabbed Sarah's arm, but Richard immediately placed himself between them. Do not touch the lady, Richard said, his voice dangerously low. 2 airport security guards appeared instantly, as if they were waiting for the right moment to intervene. Sarah, wait, Brad said, his voice now desperate and without the tone of superiority from before. We can talk about this. It might have been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Sarah laughed through tears. You spent the last 20 minutes humiliating me in public, called me a maid, useless, incompetent, and now you want to talk? I didn't know. He begged. How was I to know that you had money? Sarah completed bitterly. Is that all that matters to you? If I had told you who I was on the first day, would you have treated me differently? Brad fell silent. The answer was written on his face. Exactly, Sarah said. That's why I never told. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for my surname. But you couldn't even do that. Jessica was completely quiet now, her face pale. She looked from Sarah to Brad, slowly realizing the magnitude of what had happened. Sarah, please, Brad tried again. We can start over. Forget all this. Forget? Sarah shook her head. You cheated on me with her. Pointed at Jessica without looking directly. Left me with nothing. Laughed at my pain. Spread lies about me to the whole city. And now you want to start over because you discovered I have money? It's not because of the money. He lied desperately. Of course it is, Sarah said with sadness. It was always about money, power, status. Never was about love. I loved you, Brad shouted. You loved the idea of me, Sarah corrected. The submissive wife who made you feel powerful. But you never truly knew me, never wanted to know. Richard placed his hand delicately on Sarah's shoulder. Ma'am, we need to go. There is a schedule to keep. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears, turned to walk away, but stopped and looked at Brad one last time. Know what's funny? She said. If you had treated me with respect, with true love, I would have shared everything with you. The inheritance, the businesses, everything. But you preferred to destroy me. Sarah, he whispered, tears in his eyes now. And the saddest part, Sarah continued, is that you aren't crying for having lost me. You are crying for the billions you just found out you lost. The truth of those words hit Brad like a punch to the stomach. He fell to his knees in the middle of the lobby, the reality finally sinking in. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost one of the greatest heiresses in the country. And worse, had treated her like garbage. Jessica was motionless, realizing she had helped destroy Brad's chance with a billionaire. Her face showed rapid calculations about the implications. "Let's go," Sarah said to Richard, her voice finally firm. They started walking. The entire lobby cleared a path. People stepping aside with respect. Some applauded discreetly. The elderly lady who had defended Sarah before waved with affection. While they walked through the VIP corridor, Sarah could hear Brad screaming behind her. But the words didn't matter anymore. Security guards prevented him from following her. "Ms. Sterling," Richard said as they walked, "may I make a personal observation?" "You may. You have worked for your family for 15 years. I have never seen anyone with as much courage as you. Giving up everything to try to live a normal life is admirable." "Admirable?" Sarah laughed humorlessly. "Was it stupidity?" "No," Richard said firmly. "It was humanity. You wanted to be seen, not your money. There is nothing wrong with that." They reached the exclusive elevator that led to the executive hangar. The doors opened, revealing an interior lined with mahogany and mirrors. "How long have you known where I was?" Sarah asked as they descended. "Your father always knew," Richard admitted. "Respected your decision to live anonymously, but never stopped protecting you discreetly." "Did he send you here today?" "No. Today was a coincidence. We were expecting your arrival for an urgent family meeting. When he saw your name in the airport system, he asked that we come fetch you personally." The elevator doors opened directly into the private hangar, and there, imposing and shining under the hangar lights, was the Gulfstream G650. Pearlescent white with gold details, exactly as she remembered. But what really made Sarah's heart race was the figure standing on the jet stairs. A 60-year-old man, gray hair, impeccable suit. Her father, William Sterling. He saw her and came down the stairs quickly, eyes shining. "My daughter," he said, voice choked. Sarah ran into his arms, finally allowing herself to truly cry. Years of pain, of hiding who she was, of being mistreated, everything came out in that hug. "Dad," she sobbed. "It was horrible." "I know, my princess. I know." He hugged her tight. "But it's over. You are home now." In the airport lobby, Brad was still on his knees, being questioned by security guards. Jessica had disappeared, probably realizing she didn't want to be associated with that disaster. And in the private hangar, Sarah Sterling finally allowed herself to go back to being who she really was. But the story was far from over, and Brad Carter had not yet learned the complete lesson fate had prepared for him. Inside the Gulfstream G650 jet, Sarah was sitting in a white leather armchair, looking out the window as the plane taxied down the runway. William Sterling was sitting across from her, watching his daughter with a mix of relief and concern. Between them, a small mahogany table with 2 glasses of water. "Are you okay?" he asked for the 3rd time since they took off. Sarah nodded, but tears still flowed silently down her face. "Sorry for having disappeared for so long." "You don't need to apologize, my daughter. I am the one who should ask for forgiveness." "Why?" Sarah looked at him confused. William took a deep breath. "For letting you suffer alone during all these years. I knew where you were, knew who you were with, but I respected your decision to live far from the family." "You knew about Brad." Her voice came out so low it was almost a whisper. "Knew you had gotten married. My security team kept me informed, but from afar. You asked not to be found, so I respected it." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the day she ran away. She was 20, had just inherited $3 billion, and was suffocated by family pressure, arranged engagements, marriages of convenience, people who only saw dollar signs when they looked at her. "I just wanted to be normal," she said. "Wanted to meet someone who loved me for who I was, not for the Sterling surname." And found Brad. William said the name with poorly disguised contempt. "I did. He was indifferent at the start, attentive, kind, worked hard to build his company. I thought I had found someone genuine." "When did you realize you were wrong?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "On the honeymoon." William leaned forward, attentive. "We were at a simple restaurant because I had suggested it. Brad was furious, said his wife didn't eat in poor places." Sarah wiped her tears. "It was the first time he yelled at me, the first of many. Why didn't you come home at that moment? Because I had too much pride to admit I had failed, that my attempt at a normal life had crumbled in 2 weeks." The flight attendant appeared discreetly. "Mr. Sterling." An urgent message arrived. William took the tablet the attendant offered, read quickly, and a grim expression took over his face. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "Brad Carter is trying to contact me. 10 calls in the last 15 minutes. Sarah felt her stomach churn. "He found out who you are. Everyone found out." William showed the tablet. On the screen were headlines from news sites. "Billionaire heiress humiliated at airport, reveals identity. Ex-husband didn't know wife was one of the richest women in the country. Businessman loses fortune by humiliating billionaire ex-wife. How did it leak so fast?" Sarah whispered, horrified. "People filmed the scene at the airport, posted on social media. In an hour, it was everywhere." Sarah took the tablet and started reading the comments. Thousands of them, most defending her, calling Brad cruel, an idiot. But there were others, questioning why she had hidden her identity, accusing her of deceiving Brad. "This is going to destroy my life again," she said, voice breaking. "Everyone will know who I am. I won't have peace anymore. Sarah, look at me." William held her hands. "You never needed to hide. Being a Sterling is not shameful. It is power. And now you will learn to use this power. I don't want power. I just wanted to be happy. And you will be. But first, you need to close this cycle. Face what happened. Not run anymore." Sarah knew he was right, but the idea of going back, of facing everything, terrified her. "There is one more thing you need to know," William said, hesitant. "What?" "Brad's company is going bankrupt. It already was before this scandal. But now it will accelerate." "How do you know this?" William sighed. "Because half of his suppliers work for Sterling Group companies, and when they found out how he treated you, they all canceled contracts simultaneously." Sarah widened her eyes. "Dad, no, I don't want to." "I wasn't the one who asked," he interrupted. "It was their decision. When the news spread, executives who do business with our companies started distancing themselves from Brad on their own. No one wants to be associated with someone who humiliated a Sterling. But this will destroy him completely. He destroyed you first," William said firmly. "For years. And you endured in silence. Now he will learn that actions have consequences." Sarah leaned back in the armchair, processing everything. Part of her felt sorry for Brad, but another part, the part that had been humiliated repeatedly, felt that maybe justice was being served. "I have a meeting tomorrow," William continued, "with the Sterling Group board. They want to meet you officially. I'm not ready for this. You were born ready, just forgot who you were." At that moment, Sarah's phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it and almost dropped the phone. It was Jessica. We need to talk. About Brad. About everything. You don't know the full truth." Sarah showed the message to her father. He furrowed his brow. "It could be a trap. Or it could be important," Sarah replied. She was with him throughout this whole time. "Could know things I need to know. If you are going to meet her, take security." Sarah nodded, typing a quick reply. "Where and when?" The answer came immediately. "Skyline Cafe." "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., alone." "Definitely not going alone," William said when he read it. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Brad was sitting in a VIP lounge he had rented, trying to make desperate calls. His secretary answered on speakerphone. "Amanda, did you manage to speak to the suppliers?" "Mr. Carter, everyone canceled. Everyone. Said they don't want to do business with the company anymore." "That is impossible. We have contracts. They are paying the contractual fines. Prefer losing money than remaining associated with you." Brad threw the phone at the wall, shattering the screen. "Because of that ridiculous scene at the airport? Because of Sarah?" "Sir," Amanda hesitated before continuing. "It's not just because of the scene. The news is saying you emotionally abused one of the richest heiresses on the continent for years. This is causing a huge public backlash. Emotional abuse? We had a normal marriage." "Normal?" Amanda couldn't hide the incredulity in her voice. "Sir, there are videos going viral. One of them shows you calling her a maid disguised as a wife. Another shows her saying she gave up $3 billion to marry you. She was lying, trying to make me look bad. Mr. Carter, the Sterling Enterprises Group publicly confirmed that Sarah is the legitimate heiress of the Sterling family. It's not a lie." Brad felt the world spinning. $3 billion. He had had access to $3 billion and threw it away for... Why? For pride? For arrogance? For Jessica? Speaking of Jessica, where was she? Had disappeared the moment the situation got ugly. "Amanda, I need to talk to Sarah. Can you get her contact?" "Already tried, sir. Her old number was deactivated, and all Sterling Group contacts I tried blocked me." "Blocked?" "Yes, sir. It seems an order was given for no one from the group to speak to you or our company." Brad ran his hands through his hair, desperate. "How much cash do we have on hand?" Embarrassing silence on the other side. "Amanda, how much?" "With the cancellations, the contractual fines, and the payments that came due, sir, in 2 weeks, we will be technically bankrupt." 2 weeks? Brad whispered. "How can the company break in 2 weeks?" "Because 50% of our contracts were with companies linked directly or indirectly to the Sterling Group, and everyone canceled today." Brad hung up the phone and sank into the chair. In a single day, he had lost everything. The company it took years to build, the reputation, the future. Everything destroyed because he couldn't keep his mouth shut for 5 minutes. Worse, he had lost Sarah. Sarah, who was worth billions. Sarah, who would have shared everything with him if he had been just decent. His mind went back to specific moments of the marriage. The times she asked to work and he forbade it, saying his wife didn't need a job. The times she suggested visiting family and he refused, inventing excuses. The times she tried to dress differently and he criticized, until she went back to the simple clothes he approved of. He wasn't protecting her. He was controlling, isolating, slowly destroying the person she was. And she endured everything, for years, because she loved him. Brad started to cry, not for the financial consequences, but for the brutal realization of the monster he had become. Sarah had given up an incalculable fortune for him, and he treated her like she was nothing. Mr. Carter, he looked up, and Jessica was standing at the door of the VIP lounge, but didn't look like the same confident woman from hours ago. Was pale, nervous. "Where were you?" he asked, voice without emotion. Needed to think. "Think about how to abandon me too?" Jessica sat down, avoiding looking directly at him. "Brad, I didn't know who she was. If I knew, would have done what? Wouldn't have flirted with a married man? Wouldn't have encouraged me to leave her? It's not fair to dump everything on me," Jessica shot back. "You wanted to break up with her. You were the one who said she was dull, that you deserved something better, and you agreed because you wanted my money," Brad said bitterly. "Money that now doesn't exist anymore." Jessica remained silent, confirming the accusation without words. "Get out," Brad said calmly. "Brad, get out!" he shouted, making Jessica jump from the chair. "You got what you wanted. Made me destroy my marriage, my life, my company. Now get out and leave me alone." Jessica ran out, tears on her face, but Brad felt no satisfaction, only emptiness. His phone rang. Another call from a supplier canceling the contract. He didn't even answer, just watched the device ring until it went to voicemail. Somewhere above the clouds, Sarah was starting to rebuild the life she had abandoned, and on the ground, Brad Carter was discovering that the price of arrogance can be everything you possess. But the story was far from over, because tomorrow Sarah would meet with Jessica, and the truths that would be revealed in that cafe would change everything again. Even deeper secrets were about to emerge, secrets that not even Sarah imagined existed. The Skyline Cafe was located in the heart of the financial center, a discreet establishment frequented by executives and businessmen. Sarah arrived promptly at 10 in the morning. Accompanied by 2 security guards, William had insisted accompany her. They stood at a nearby table, dressed casually so as not to attract attention, but attentive to every movement. Jessica was already there, sitting in a secluded corner, wearing huge dark glasses and a scarf trying to hide part of her face. When she saw Sarah approaching, she became visibly nervous, compulsively fiddling with a coffee cup that seemed untouched. "You came?" Jessica said, voice coming out lower than Sarah remembered. "Said I would come," Sarah replied, sitting opposite her, but keeping distance. "You have 5 minutes to say what you need to say." "Sarah, I need to apologize." "Apologize?" Sarah let out a humorless laugh. "You destroyed my marriage, helped humiliate me in public, and now want apologies? I know I don't deserve forgiveness." Jessica took off the dark glasses, revealing red and swollen eyes from crying so much. "But you need to know the truth. About Brad? About everything." Sarah crossed her arms, waiting. Part of her wanted to leave right away, but another part needed to understand. "Brad knew," Jessica said suddenly. "Knew what?" "Who you were from the beginning." The world seemed to stop around Sarah. "That is a lie." "It isn't." Jessica opened her purse and took out a crumpled envelope. "I found this yesterday in his office. He sent me to get some documents and I ended up finding it." Sarah took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were old photos of her, still a teenager, at Sterling family social events. There were magazine clippings about the family fortune. There was even a detailed private investigation about Sarah Sterling, dated 6 months before she met Brad. "No, it's not possible," Sarah whispered, flipping through the documents with growing horror. "There's more," Jessica continued, tears running down her face. "He hired me to make you sign documents that would give him access to your inheritance when you turned 30. Sarah looked at Jessica, trying to process that. You were hired?" Not in the way you are thinking. He offered me money to work at his company. But the real function was to get close to him, make you feel insecure, create the separation. All planned. Why? Sarah's voice came out broken. Why did you accept? Jessica covered her face with her hands. Because I needed money. My mother was sick. The hospital bills were impossible. Brad offered me $100,000 to execute the plan. Seemed like a lot of money at the time. $100,000 to destroy a life. Sarah said bitterly. What a bargain. I didn't know you were so good. Jessica cried harder. I thought you would be just another rich, spoiled madam who deserved to lose the playboy husband. But when I started observing you two, saw how you truly loved him, how you tried to please him in everything, how you diminished yourself to make him feel big. Sarah felt tears starting to fall too. Hearing that from Jessica was more painful than any public humiliation. And even so, you continued, Sarah said, even seeing that I was suffering. Because I am weak. Jessica exploded. Because my mother was dying and I needed the money. Because Brad promised me another $100,000 when you signed the documents. Because I am a horrible person who put money above doing the right thing. People around started to look, but Jessica didn't care anymore. Your mother, Sarah began, voice softening a bit, died 3 months ago. Jessica completed. And you know what Brad did? Laughed. Said now I had no more excuses to be weak, that I had to finish the job. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to contain the pain. Everything had been a lie, from the beginning. The chance meeting, the romance, the marriage, all carefully orchestrated by a man who only saw her as a vault to be robbed. The documents, Sarah asked, voice mechanically calm. Did I sign? No. Brad tried to make you sign several times, disguising as day-to-day things. But you always read everything before signing. He got furious. That's why he got irritated when I checked contracts, Sarah murmured, the pieces finally fitting together. He said I didn't trust him. It was manipulation, Jessica said. Everything was. When he realized you were too careful, he changed strategy, started isolating you, destroying your self-esteem, making you feel incapable of making decisions alone. Sarah held the edge of the table, feeling nausea. How long had he planned this? Don't know for sure, but from the documents he started investigating your family years before you met. Your meeting wasn't a coincidence. He found out where you frequented, what you liked, and put himself in the path. So nothing was real, Sarah whispered. I don't know if he never felt anything, Jessica admitted. But I know the plan was always the money. Always. Sarah stood up abruptly, needing air. The security guards immediately became alert, but she signaled for them to stay where they were. Wait. Jessica held her arm delicately. There's one more thing. More? Sarah laughed humorlessly. What can be worse than this? Brad is trying to sue you, claiming you hid assets in the divorce, that he has a right to half your fortune. Sarah sat back down, too shocked to stand. He can't do that. Can try. And will. Last night he called me, desperate, asking me to testify in his favor. That I say you always had money during the marriage, that you hid it on purpose. And will you? Sarah asked, looking into Jessica's eyes. No, Jessica replied firmly. I'm going to testify against him, going to hand over all the documents I found, going to tell about the plan, about everything. Because maybe then I can sleep at night without hating the person I became. Sarah remained silent for a long moment, looked at Jessica, saw genuine regret, guilt destroying her from the inside. part of Sarah wanted to hate that woman forever, but another part understood. "You were vulnerable," Sarah said finally. "He took advantage of your situation, just like he took advantage of mine. That doesn't excuse me." "No, but it explains," Jessica sobbed, covering her face again. "I don't deserve your understanding." "Don't deserve," Sarah agreed. "But we all deserve a chance to do the right thing, even if belatedly." She stood up again, taking the envelope with the documents. "My lawyers will contact you for an official deposition." "And Jessica?" "Yes? Thank you for telling me the truth. Even if it hurts, it's better to know." Sarah left the cafe. The security guards immediately by her side entered the armored car waiting out front, and only when the door closed, allowed herself to fall apart completely. Cried like she hadn't cried since she was a child. Cried for years of life wasted with someone who never loved her. Cried for the lost innocence. Cried for the woman she was before meeting Brad. One of the security guards discreetly offered a box of tissues. Sarah thanked him with a nod and tried to compose herself. "Where to, Ms. Sterling?" the driver asked respectfully. "To the Sterling Enterprises Group office?" she replied, wiping tears. "I have a meeting." While the car crossed the city, Sarah watched the buildings passing by the window. Every street, every corner, carried memories of a life she now understood had been completely false. The Sterling Enterprises Group building was imposing, 60 floors of glass and steel in the financial heart of the city. Sarah had been there only a few times in her life, always feeling out of place, as if she didn't belong to that world. But today was different. Today she was returning not as a fugitive, but as an heiress. The reception stood up when she entered. "Ms. Sterling, welcome. Your father is waiting in the boardroom." Sarah nodded, entering the private elevator that went straight to the 50th floor. The doors opened, revealing a luxurious corridor with artwork on the walls and marble floors. William was at the door of the meeting room, talking to a 50-year-old woman, hair tied in an elegant bun. "Sarah," he smiled when he saw her. "Want to introduce you to Ms. Helen Clark, our chief lawyer." "Ms. Sterling." Helen extended her hand firmly. "It is an honor to finally meet you in person." "The pleasure is mine," Sarah replied, trying to maintain professional composure. "Your father informed me about the meeting with Ms. Tate," Helen said. "If what she alleged is true, we have a criminal case against Mr. Carter, matrimonial fraud, attempted embezzlement, conspiracy." "It is true." Sarah took the envelope from her purse. "She gave me proof." Helen opened the envelope and examined the documents quickly, eyes widening. This is sufficient evidence to destroy any chance of his in civil court, and can lead to prison." "Prison?" Sarah repeated, shocked. "Planning fraud on a large scale. Attempt to obtain inheritance through fraudulent means. Yes, these are serious crimes." Sarah sat in a chair processing that. Brad hadn't just deceived her emotionally, but had committed crimes. "What do you want to do?" William asked gently. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Part of me wants to see him pay for everything, but another part just wants to forget and move on." "You don't need to decide now," Helen said, "but need to be aware that he is trying to sue the lady. Claims you committed fraud by hiding your true financial identity during the marriage. That is ridiculous." William exploded. She had no obligation to reveal anything. "Technically, no," Helen agreed, "but he will argue that by purposely hiding her fortune, she invalidated the separation agreement. We'll ask for review and new division of assets." "He wants money," Sarah said tiredly. "Always wanted, and won't get a cent," Helen promised. "With this evidence, we can not only defeat his lawsuit, but prosecute him criminally." At that moment, The door opened and a 40-year-old man entered hurriedly. "Sorry for the interruption, Mr. Sterling, but there is a situation you need to see." He turned on the meeting room television. It was a live news program. In shocking development, Brad Carter, businessman at the center of the controversy involving heiress Sarah Sterling, has just given an exclusive interview claiming to be a victim of manipulation. The screen showed Brad sitting in a studio with the expression of a victim perfectly rehearsed. "Sarah made me believe she was poor," he was saying on TV, "pretended to be vulnerable, needy. I took her in, gave her everything, and now discover it was all a lie. She used me." Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. "Mr. Carter?" the interviewer asked. "But videos show you humiliating your ex-wife publicly at the airport." "I was shocked," Brad replied, seeming emotional. "Imagine discovering that the woman you loved for years lied about absolutely everything." I reacted badly, I admit, but it was the pain of betrayal. "He is twisting everything." Sarah shouted at the TV, "Calm down!" William held her shoulders. "This will turn against him." "How?" Sarah turned, tears of rage in her eyes. "He is on national television painting me as manipulative. Half the country will believe him, and the other half has the proof." Helen showed the envelope. "That's without counting Jessica's testimony." "Sarah, you have to trust the process." On TV, Brad continued, "I am considering legal action, not for the money, but for justice. She needs to answer for this farce." "Farce?" Sarah repeated, incredulous. "Farce?" William turned off the TV. "Enough. We aren't going to watch any more of this clown show. Dad, he is destroying my reputation, and we are going to restore it, but the right way. Not with shouting or accusations, but with facts and evidence." Helen nodded. "Going to prepare an official response. And tomorrow, if the lady agrees, let's do an interview rebutting point by point." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Okay, but I want to do this my way. No personal attacks, just truths. As it should be?" William agreed. Helen's phone rang. She answered, listened for a few seconds, and her face became serious. "Just received an official notification. Brad Carter is filing a lawsuit asking for 50% of Sarah Sterling's fortune, alleging fraudulent stable union and concealment of assets. 50%. He was literally asking for half of $3 billion. Sarah sat down again, the weight of everything finally hitting her for real. She wasn't just fighting against a cruel ex-husband, was fighting against someone who had planned to destroy her from day one. But this time, she wasn't alone, and this time, she wasn't going to run. "Prepare everything," Sarah said to Helen, voice finally firm and determined. "Let's go to war." The Superior Court hearing room was packed. Journalists filled the benches reserved for press, cameras positioned strategically. The case had taken on national proportions. "Billionaire in disguise versus scammer ex-husband" was a headline in every outlet. Sarah was sitting next to Helen Clark and a team of 3 lawyers, wore a discreet but elegant suit, hair tied back, light makeup. Looked exactly like what she was. A serious and competent businesswoman. Nothing of the submissive woman Brad had known. On the other side, Brad Carter was accompanied by a single lawyer, Mr. Mark Sanders, known for taking controversial cases. Brad wore a new suit, clearly expensive, trying to keep up appearances. But the sunken eyes and trembling hands betrayed the nervousness. Judge Frank Benson entered, a 65-year-old man, completely white hair, known for rigorous but fair decisions. "Court is in session," he announced. "We are here to judge case number 2847, where Mr. Brad Carter requests review of division of assets and financial compensation from Mrs. Sarah Sterling due to matrimonial fraud. Helen stood up. Your Honor, before we begin, I would like to present evidence that the true fraudster is the plaintiff, Mr. Brad Carter. Mr. Sanders jumped from his chair. Objection. Attempt to divert focus from the case. Objection denied. The judge said calmly, Ms. Clark, present your evidence. Helen turned on a projector. The first image shown was the private investigation. That Jessica had handed over. Dated 6 months before Sarah met Brad. Your Honor, Mr. Carter hired investigators to locate Miss Sarah Sterling, daughter of William Sterling, when she was living under a discreet identity. He mapped her routine, her favorite places, and deliberately placed himself in her path. The room exploded in murmurs. Journalists typed frantically on laptops. This is a lie, Brad shouted, but his lawyer pulled him back to the chair. I have here, Helen continued, showing receipts. Payments made by Mr. Carter to the Confidential Investigations Agency, total of $85,000 spent in 6 months of investigation. Sarah looked at Brad. He avoided her gaze, face red. Your Honor, Mr. Sanders tried to intervene. Even if he investigated, that doesn't prove fraudulent intent. But this proves it. Helen showed another document. Contract between Brad Carter and Jessica Tate, dated 1 year after the marriage. In it, Mr. Carter pays Mrs. Tate $100,000 to facilitate amicable separation and obtaining of financial documents. Gasps filled the room. That was more than emotional manipulation. It was documented conspiracy. Is Ms. Tate present to testify? The judge asked. She is. Jessica was called. Entered the room head down, wearing simple clothes, no makeup. Looked 10 years older than days ago. Ms. Tate, the judge said, are you aware that lying under oath is a crime? I am, Your Honor. Tell what you know. Jessica took a deep breath and began. Brad approached me 2 years ago. Said he needed help to make his wife sign some documents. Offered $100,000. I accepted because my mother was sick. What kind of documents? The judge asked. Powers of attorney that would give him access to her accounts when she turned 30. He knew Sarah had an inheritance scheduled for that age. Brad was pale. Mister, Sanders whispered desperately in his ear. And did you manage to get her to sign? No. Sarah always read everything before signing. That's why Brad changed strategy. Started asking me to get close to him. To create jealousy, insecurity in her. Did you have a relationship with Mr. Carter while he was married? Jessica nodded, tears flowing. Yes, and I hate who I became for that. Sarah closed her eyes, the words still hurting even already knowing the truth. Your Honor, Helen returned to the attack. Besides Ms. Tate's testimony, we have recordings. Recordings? It was Brad's turn to stand up, genuinely shocked. Helen played an audio. Brad's voice was unmistakable. Jessica, you need to make her doubt herself. Criticize the things she does. Make her feel incapable. The more fragile she gets, the easier it will be when I ask for divorce and she accepts any agreement. The room went deadly silent. It was Brad's own voice, without any possibility of denial, methodically planning to destroy his wife's self-esteem. Where did you get this? Brad whispered. Ms. Tate recorded several conversations, Helen explained. Initially as protection for herself. Now is using as evidence. The judge looked at Brad with clear repulsion on his face. Mr. Carter, do you have anything to say in your defense? Mr. Sanders stood up, clearly improvising. Your Honor, my client acted in a reprehensible manner, but that does not change the fact that Ms. Sterling purposely hid her fortune during the marriage. She had no obligation to reveal. Helen shot back immediately. There was no community property. And more importantly, she wasn't using family money. Lived only on what Mr. Carter provided, exactly to avoid future issues. Your Honor, Mr. Sanders tried again. I request a recess to consult my client. Denied, the judge said firmly. Let's continue. Miss Clark, do you have more evidence? Yes, I would like to call Ms. Sarah Sterling herself to testify. Sarah stood up, legs trembling slightly, walked to the front, was sworn in, and sat in the witness chair. It was the first time she was face to face with Brad since the airport. Ms. Sterling, Helen began gently, can you tell us why you decided to hide your true identity? Sarah took a deep breath. I grew up as heiress of the Sterling Group. Since childhood, I was treated differently. People wanted to get close, not for who I was, but for what I had. At 20, I was engaged to a man my father had chosen, someone appropriate for the family business. She paused, emotion taking over. I didn't want that, wanted to be loved for myself. So I ran away. Changed name, lived with the minimum possible, tried to build a normal life. And when did you meet Mr. Carter? I thought I had found exactly what I was looking for. He saw me as Sarah, not as heiress Sterling. Someone who loved me for who I was. Her voice broke. Tears began to fall, but it was a lie. Everything was. From the first hello, from the first coffee, every gesture, every word, every promise. Everything planned. The room was completely silent. Journalists had stopped typing. Sarah continued. I blamed myself. Thought I wasn't good enough. That if I tried harder, cooked better, was prettier, more interesting, he would stop criticizing me, would stop making me feel small. But now I understand. He needed me to feel small, because the smaller I felt, the easier it would be to control me. Brad had his head down. At some point during the marriage, did Mr. Carter demonstrate genuine love? Sarah thought for a long moment. There were moments I wanted to believe so. But looking back, I see that every gesture had a motive. Every gift came with a condition. Every affection was followed by criticism. Do you still love him? No, Sarah said with certainty, because I finally understood that you cannot love someone who never truly existed. The Brad I loved was a lie he enacted for years. Mr. Sanders stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Sterling, don't you think it dishonest to have hidden billions of dollars from your husband? He wasn't my husband when I made the decision to live discreetly. And when we married, I made clear there was no money on my part. I wanted to build something real, not bought. Don't you think my client deserves compensation for the years he supported you? Sarah looked directly at Brad for the first time. I cleaned his house, cooked his meals, organized his life, supported his career, sacrificing any chance of mine, endured humiliations, constant criticism, isolation from my family. Spontaneous applause exploded in the room. The judge banged the gavel asking for silence, but couldn't hide a small smile. No further questions. Mr. Sanders said, defeated. Sarah returned to her seat. William, who was sitting in the first row, squeezed her hand when she passed. Well done, my daughter, he whispered. Your Honor. Helen stood up. Mr. William Sterling mentioned being engaged when she ran away. This engagement was never officially broken. Sarah looked at Helen confused, didn't understand where that was going. Mr. William Sterling, Helen called. Could you come to the front? William stood up, imposing even at 60, went to the front, and stood beside Sarah. "Mr. Sterling," Helen said, "can you explain the situation?" When Sarah ran away years ago, she was committed to Edward Eddie Montgomery, son of a business partner. It was an arranged marriage that I, foolishly, had organized. Sarah held her breath. This was the urgent family meeting he had mentioned. Edward waited. William continued. Year after year, even when he learned Sarah had married another man, he waited because he truly loved her. Sarah whispered, "3 days ago, Edward sought me out, said he saw the news about you, and asked if there was still a chance." Tears ran down Sarah's face. Edward, she barely remembered him, had met only a few times before running away. "Is he here?" she asked. "He is." William pointed to a 35-year-old man sitting in the back of the room. Hopeful. Edward stood up and waved discreetly. Didn't seem expectant or demanding. Just hopeful. "Your Honor," Helen explained. "I mention this because Mr. Carter claims he had a right to half of Miss Sterling's fortune. But, legally, his marriage to her can be annulled, since there was a prior commitment not formally broken." Mr. Sanders jumped. "This is ridiculous, not only in marriage, but in family law, when involving large fortunes and documented family agreements, can invalidate subsequent marriages made under fraud." The judge flipped through some documents. "It is a complex legal question. We'll need to analyze precedents." "Your Honor," Helen pressed, "the point is, Mr. Carter not only defrauded my client emotionally, but the entire marriage is legally void. He has no right to absolutely nothing." Brad finally exploded. "This is unfair. I spent years with her, years of my life, years planning to steal from her." Helen shot back. "Years manipulating, abusing, destroying. You are not a victim, Mr. Carter. You are a criminal." "Order!" The judge banged the gavel hard, defeated. "Ms. Clark," the judge said, "the case is more than clear. I am going to recess for 2 hours to prepare sentence. But I say in advance, Mr. Carter will not receive a cent and may face criminal prosecution." The room exploded in conversation. Journalists ran out to broadcast live. Sarah remained seated, still processing everything. Edward approached shyly. Sarah had gentle eyes. Nothing of Brad's arrogance or cruelty. "Hi, Edward," she said, not knowing what else to say. "I didn't come to demand anything," he said quickly. "Just wanted you to know that that engagement was the best thing that almost happened to me. And if one day maybe you want just to have a coffee, no pressure, no expectations, I would love to know who you became." Sarah smiled through tears. "Maybe one day I'll accept." Edward nodded, smiled back, and stepped away respectfully. William hugged his daughter. "You were incredible up there. Thank you for everything," Sarah said. "For respecting my choices, even not agreeing. For protecting me even from afar. You are my daughter. Always will protect you." While they waited for the final sentence, and it was there she had the encounter she was avoiding. Brad was leaning against the wall, alone. Mr. Sanders had disappeared, probably abandoning the case. "Sarah," he said when he saw her. She almost kept walking, but something made her stop. Maybe needed this, a last confrontation, a real closure. "What do you want, Brad?" "I wanted to apologize. Do you think apologies fix years of lies?" "No. No, they don't fix, but need you to know that, and that there were real moments where I really—" "No," Sarah interrupted him. "Don't try to rewrite history now. You yourself admitted in the audio. Everything was manipulation." Brad closed his eyes. "I lost myself. When I started, it was just about money. When I started getting used to it, Sarah felt anger growing. I am not a piece of furniture, Brad. Not something to get used to. I was your wife. Was someone who truly loved you. I know, he shouted back. And that was what scared me, because the more you loved me, the more I realized I didn't deserve it, that I was deceiving you. So I started pushing you away, making you feel bad, so everything would fall apart. Sarah stood silent, shocked by the confession. But you never hated me, Brad continued, tears finally falling. No matter what I did, you kept trying, kept loving me, and I hated you for that, because you made me see the monster I was. So you brought Jessica, Sarah completed, not just for the plan, but to destroy me for good. Yes, he admitted, and it worked. You finally gave up on me. Should have given up years earlier. Should have, he agreed. You deserved much more than me. Silence weighed between them. Brad, Sarah said finally, I forgive you. He widened his eyes, shocked. What? Not for you, for me, because carrying hate will only destroy me too. I forgive, but that doesn't mean I will forget, or that you won't pay for the consequences. I know, and I will pay, will lose everything, just like you tried to do to me. Brad nodded, accepting. Will you stay with Edward? Don't know, maybe. Or maybe I finally learned to be alone and happy. You will be happy, Brad said with certainty, because you are a good person. Something I never was. The court officer appeared at the door. Judge is returning. Sentence in 5 minutes. Sarah started walking back to the room, stopped and looked at Brad one last time. Goodbye, Brad. Goodbye, Sarah. And thank you. Why? For showing me what kind of man I never want to be again. Sarah nodded and entered the room. Judge Frank Benson returned to the room with an expression of doubt, held a document of several pages, and silence was absolute when he started reading. After analyzing all evidence presented, this court concludes that the marriage between Sarah Sterling and Brad Carter was based on deliberate and premeditated fraud. His voice echoed firmly through the room. The plaintiff, Mr. Carter, investigated the defendant with criminal intent, manipulated her emotionally for years, and conspired with third parties to obtain illegal access to her fortune. Brad was white as paper. Mr. Sanders had already started collecting his documents discreetly. Therefore, I determine. First, the request for review of division of assets and financial compensation is denied in its entirety. Mr. Carter has no right to a single cent of Miss Sterling's fortune. Applause exploded in the room. The judge banged the gavel asking for silence, but didn't reprimand those present. Second, I determined the complete annulment of the marriage, as if it never legally existed, based on matrimonial fraud, and the existence of prior commitment not formally broken. Sarah felt tears of relief. It was not just divorce. It was as if those years of lies were erased legally. Third, the judge continued, I forward this case to the district attorney's office for the opening of criminal prosecution against Brad Carter for the crimes of larceny, conspiracy to commit fraud, and continued psychological abuse. The penalty can reach 8 years of imprisonment. Brad collapsed in the chair, hiding his face in his hands. There was no more running. The consequences finally caught up to him. Regarding Ms. Jessica Tate, the judge looked at her, who was trembling on the witness bench. She recommended her cooperation by handing over evidence and testifying against Mr. Carter. I recommend community service instead of criminal prosecution upon continuation of psychological counseling. Jessica sobbed with relief, nodding repeatedly. Case closed. The judge banged the gavel for the last time. The room exploded in activity. Journalists ran out. Lawyers shook hands. Sarah remained seated, letting reality penetrate slowly. Was free, truly free. William hugged her tight. "It's over, my daughter. It's truly over." Helen approached smiling. "Sarah, this will change jurisprudence in the country. Cases of emotional abuse will be able to use this precedent." Sarah hadn't even thought about that. Her pain, her story, could help other women trapped in similar situations. In the room, police officers approached Brad. Weren't going to arrest him immediately, but would escort him to give a statement. He looked at Sarah one last time, and she saw something she never expected to see in those eyes. True regret. She nodded slightly. Was not renewed forgiveness, just recognition. He had become a living warning of what greed and manipulation destroy. Jessica approached shyly when the room started to explode. It started to empty. "Sarah, I don't have words. You did the right thing in the end," Sarah said. "That counts. I'm going to use my community service sentence to work with women in shelters. Help those coming out of abusive relationships. Maybe then I can compensate a little." "It is a start." Sarah offered a small smile. "We all deserve second chances." "I am." Edward waited discreetly in the hallway. When Sarah came out, he approached. "Are you okay?" "I am. Better than I have been in years. That coffee I mentioned is still on. No pressure. Just two old acquaintances talking." Sarah looked at him. Really looked. Saw genuine kindness, patience, and perfect. 3 weeks later, Sarah was on the 50th floor of the Sterling Enterprises Group, not as a visitor, but as Director of Human Relations and Sustainable Development. Had created the position specifically. Wanted to use the family position to make a real difference. "First order of the day," she said at the board meeting. "Let's establish a fund of $100 million to support women housing, professional training, psychological support, legal assistance." The executives nodded, some moved by the proposal. "Second, let's create independent auditing in all group companies to identify and combat workplace harassment. Zero tolerance." William, sitting at the head of the table, smiled proudly. That was the daughter he always knew she was. After the meeting, Sarah was alone in the office that was now hers. Looked out the panoramic window at the city. No longer ran away. Didn't hide who she was. Had learned that dignity doesn't come from hiding your light, but from using it to illuminate the path of others. Her phone rang. Message from Edward. "Confirmed for tomorrow? Promise the coffee is good." She smiled, typing the answer. "Remember?" His answer came fast. "Then I'll order dessert." Sarah laughed. Truly laughed, and realized it was the first time in years she laughed without weight in her chest. Opened the desk drawer and took out an old photo William had given her. It was her at 20, days before running away. Scared eyes, forced smile. A lost girl, but no more. Now she knew that true freedom didn't come from hiding who you are, nor from becoming small to fit in someone else's dreams. Came from accepting your own greatness and using it with wisdom and compassion. Sarah Sterling had been humiliated in a crowded airport by a man who thought she was nothing. But she was always everything. And now, finally, she believed it. Saw the whole city stretching before her, full of possibilities, of new beginnings, of stories not yet written. And for the first time in life, Sarah Sterling was not running from who she was. She was embracing it.